This episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast is brought to you by On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point with their line of pomades and beard oils over at onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout and get 15% off your total purchase order. So thanks again to On Point Pomade for sponsoring our show. This episode is also sponsored by the Bean Bastard Coffee. Head over to thebeanbastard.com and pick up any one of their delicious hand-roasted coffees. Coffee lovers will also enjoy their hand-cut and handmade espresso candles and soaps as well. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their store located at 448 Elmwood Avenue. And thanks again to the Bean Bastard for supporting this show. BREWtally Speaking Podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BREW and get 10% off your total order. Now on to the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is the legendary Dee fucking Snider. Goddamn, Dee Snider on the podcast. For those of you who have been living under a rock for the last probably 40 years or so and don't know who the fuck Dee Snider is, I don't know how to help you with that. But Dee has a new album out now as of when you're hearing this called Leave a Scar, out via Napalm Records. You will hear me say it was out via Nuclear Blast Records. There's pre-orders all over the place, so it's kind of hard sometimes when you see where a record is being, able to be bought, and you're like, oh, it must be through that. So I still actually don't know if it's just because Nuclear Blast has the distribution for it, maybe overseas or not, but officially it's out through Napalm Records, so there's that. Go pick it up. It is a great fucking record if you haven't listened to it already. I mean, how did you miss the legendary Corpse Grinder and Dee Snider doing the song that broke the internet for about a day and a half? But this was a really fun chat. Dee is someone that I've been trying to get on the show for a while. He actually had appeared out at the first Astronomicon, which is Twisted's convention, horror kind of comics, music convention that they do here in Michigan, and Dee was a guest at the first one, and, I tried to get him on, but he was just too busy, meeting hands, shaking babies, what is it, how does that old saying go, shaking babies and kissing hands or something like that, but it was definitely one of those where I've been trying to get him on for a while, then obviously, being a fan of the Josta podcast and, hearing Jamie basically pitch what would become For the Love of Metal album, and Dee kind of doing a heavier metal record. And, I tried to get him on then because it's really inspiring, just Dee's story of just never giving up. And I mean, the guy who, we're not going to take it and, all those kind of things, like where it's like, he's just always stood up in the face of adversity. I mean, he is so unapologetically himself, and sometimes that does get him into trouble, as you sometimes see some of the headlines that Dee has made over the years and so forth, and just kind of how divisive that can be at times. But Dee is just one of those people that, for someone who has talked on this show, even going back to, some of the episodes, over the 300 episodes we've done, where it's like, I've talked about pivoting sometimes, like if this isn't working, pivot a little bit and then try to find your way, but don't give up. Just, sometimes maybe the avenue you're going down isn't the way that it's going to work out for you, but if you pivot, you might find a new direction. So when Twisted Sister wasn't really working for Dee, he kind of pivoted and started doing radio and voiceover work, and it wasn't successful right away. He had to fucking work at it. but he found success because he didn't give up. And that's something I've always admired about Dee, is just his willingness to just persevere through real fucking tough times. And like I said, just being unapologetically himself, not being afraid to speak out, and vocalize how he feels about a wide array of topics. The last few days, as of when I'm recording this, Dee's been very vocal about, his grandkids and family getting COVID from going to Disney World, and that they're not, in fact, doing what they say they're going to do as far as, the protocols that they have in place. And it's been, really cool to just kind of see someone still not being afraid to be outspoken. The same person that stood up for musicians' rights, against, being censored and so forth. Dee is still that fucking person speaking for everybody. The people who are afraid to speak up. Dee is the voice, I guess, of the voiceless, for lack of a better term. But this was a real fucking honor. And I'm going to stop blabbing. Let's get into my conversation with Dee Snider, and I'll talk to y'all on the other side of it. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. Never used this before, so this is a lot of fun figuring new technology out.
New technology.
I'll get going because I know you probably got a string of these right after me as well, so don't take up too much of your time.
Well, let's go.
So I had the pleasure of talking to Dee Snider, whose upcoming album Leave a Scar comes out July 30th via Nuclear Blast Records.
Nope.
And
Napalm.
Napalm. Why is that one of the pre-orders then is on Nuclear Blast then?
Are they affiliated?
I don't know. I saw that Nuclear Blast has pre-orders and such up, unless they're your foreign distributor.
Oh, well, okay. Well, whatever John says, John. The show is called Brewtally, so he knows about brutal music. So I just thought I was on Napalm.
We'll cover both bases. I did see a pre-order at least up on Nuclear Blast Records. We'll say it's also out to be at Napalm Records as well. That covers either one, so we can both be correct. But yeah, very weird because I know listening to Josta's show, he's been pumping it on a bunch of different avenues. So I don't know if you have just different distribution.
Yeah, like the water thing and everything. Yeah. I don't. Yeah, it's a whole new world, man. It's a whole new world.
Speaking of a whole new world, I personally, since I have the time to talk to you, I first off want to start off by saying thank you so much for donating some items to my friend who did the For the Nomads auction during the beginning of the pandemic for out of work touring, road crew and people. I sent out a tweet. You responded to it very quickly. You got items out to him. They sold. They raised money. So I personally want to thank you for being a part of that. That meant a lot to me. That's
cool. With this whole pandemic thing. There's so many elements to it that people don't even realize, the cause and effect of something like this. And that is one thing, all the people who work for the bands, just crazy, whose livelihoods, and it was very personal to me as well. My nephew, Jason Judding, he's a tour manager for a lot of great metal bands he's worked with. The list is long and glorious. And I know he was out of work, and just all of a sudden home, kid, wife, like now what, so that was it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of those that basically we reached out to a lot of different people, and it was kind of surprising to see how some people were very quick to react to it and some people were very hesitant and all that. And I think it kind of speaks more to the quality of character of you and a lot of the other people that donated so quickly and graciously. So just again, wanted to say thank you. But kind of, I guess, not really speaking of taking a risk, but, it's funny having been doing a podcast now. I just dropped my 300th episode. We're approaching 5 years of doing this. It's funny that essentially For the Love of Metal and, the follow-up record basically started because Josta pitched you on his podcast. And I did want to know, because I know a while back you had made the comment about how it was going to take a little longer to do a follow-up. That was before the pandemic was coming, but did the success of that and kind of taking a risk so far into your career, did that make you want to take a little bit more risks on this record?
Well, first of all, the idea that this rebirth, and that's the only way you can describe it. Only way I can describe it comes from a crazy idea in Jamie Joss's fevered brain, a vision that he had of a Dee Snider metal record, and that would be embraced by the contemporary metal community. And I am, the credit I'll take is that I am fearless in that regard, but also I love metal, and the fact that I removed myself in 1995, pretty much stopped creating new music like that, was really not because I didn't love it and love was happening. I just felt like I had overstayed my welcome, partially because it was in my mind that I had, and partially because I think there were some reviews that said Dee Snider has overstayed his welcome. So I sort of disappeared, in that regard. I mean, I was doing Twisted Sister and, but not creating, not where I wanted to be. Jamie saw a place, saw a path, and brought me to it. I call him my Sherpa, guiding me through the metal mountains. And so he brought me there, and I love him for that. As far as a follow-up record goes, the truth was that I didn't think I was going to do a follow-up record. And I even told the guys in 2019, management, my band, my family, Jamie, that I was done. I wasn't going to do another one. I said, you know what? Why mess with it? I actually got into the top of the Billboard charts. I had a #1 metal album in the world and I said, you know what? I should just drop the mic and say, thank you, good night, and walk away and do other things. So that was part of me. But then the world went crazy. Pandemic, the political turmoil all over the world, not just our country. It's going on all over the world. And I found myself realizing I had something that I wanted to say, and this was a way for me to say it through the way I've always said it. And for the first time in 25 years, I called Jamie, the only time I've ever used a producer 2 records in a row. And I said, dude, I want to do this again. I'm ready. Now you've shown me where I belong. I'm ready to go back there and continue on this path. But I want to be a participant beyond the voice, beyond delivering the songs, which is very real, but I want to be a part of the creative process. So, we came to that, but now we knew where we were going, and Jamie welcomed me into that process. He goes, "Hey, you're the one who said you didn't want to be a part of it." And I said, "Yeah, because I didn't know where I fit, but now I get it."
Right. I mean, this is maybe an odd question. Has anyone else from kind of your scene or anybody that you interact with kind of been like, fuck, maybe I should do that, like, and kind of come with you into something a little bit heavier? I know there's been someone else that Josta has said that he wants to do something similar for, but I know, like, just want to know boots on the ground or people coming up to you that you came up with that are like, I think I want to do that. Like, is it giving people more of an idea that they can, the permission to, I guess?
They should. They should. But I don't know. I mean, how many of them are truly would be able to that are, number one, still have the chops, and I know that I still have a very strong voice, and that was one of the things that motivated Jamie. He said, "I heard you live, dude. You're like a lion." So he said, "Your voice is strong as ever, and we need your voice." So that was one of the things. The other thing is, I have stayed in touch with and kept a passion for metal in all its forms through it all. Since I'm day one metal fan, I was the guy who bought the first Sabbath album, first Zeppelin album, first Cran Funk, first Blue Cheer when they came out. I'm that old. And it was called Hard Rock. And right. I was there as it mutated and changed to metal. My kids were all metalheads, and they've continued even in post-Twisted to introduce me, show me, bring me to shows, drag me, make me go sing with Attack on stage. They didn't really have to make me work that hard to do it. As my daughter just said, "You're singing with Attack at the Van Warped Tour." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I talked to him on Facebook." I'm like, What am I doing?" And she was like, "Get out there, Dad, you can do it." But kept me connected. And I don't know how many of my peers still have that love of, for what's new and right. are fearless with what's new. And then there is the trust fall. With Jamie, I said, "All right, you're going to do this. You go all in. And you don't sit there questioning things. You don't sit there insisting to have your way. And you don't, these words should never come out of your mouth. Well, the way I do it, or I used to, back when I was, the minute that, these are all things, statements that people from my generation are very quick to make. That's all that, and that will hamstring you. And Jamie has told me he's tried working with others who did all those things and ultimately killed it because you got to be trusting. You got to love what's going on in the world of metal today and embrace it in a way I truly do. And you got to have the pipes. So while I think Jamie could do miracles for people, I don't wonder how many people could actually answer all those questions like check, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is just, I don't know. It's kind of interesting because, I talked to Dennis DeYoung about a month ago now, and he, is getting ready to put out a new record, or has at this point, and it's really good. And it was just one of those things like, he's like, I know where my fandom is and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, could you transition? Because like, you still got a fucking great voice. Like maybe you could do something a little more in the vein of harder rock nowadays or whatever. Like, I think it would be
that's one of the reasons I stopped writing and creating back in the 90s. People, and in Twisted Reformed, it was a reunion, so, but people, there was a certain group of people who would say, why don't you do a new album? Why don't you do a new album? And I said, because if a heritage band does a new record and tries to move forward with the times, they get slammed for being something they're not. And then if a heritage band tries to put out an album that sounds like the way they always sounded, they get slammed for sounding like they always sounded. Yeah. They're not doing anything new. It's like, and I've seen it dozens and dozens of times with heritage bands. And I go, there was I just said no passion. Kiss would put out an album that sells 100,000 copies. Okay. I'm not putting Kiss down for putting a new album out. People they don't want that from heritage bands. They want to hear old songs. But now so another plus was that I was a solo artist. I was separate from Twisted Sister. So that also, I think, helped that people could be a little more open to the idea, like, okay, this is Dee Snider now. Yeah. All right. What is it?
Yeah. One of the things I think, and it made a shitload of news, was obviously your Time to Choose collaboration with Corpse Grinder. It does make me wonder, though, because I know the first album obviously had a lot of great vocalists and guests and all that kind of stuff. Who is a quote unquote out of the box guest you would like to work with that maybe you haven't yet?
I think I closed that box.
Okay.
I mean, I did Broadway songs with Patti LuPone and BB Newworth and Cyndi Lauper, and who people I wanted to sing with. I do other theatrical stuff and where I get to sing opera, and George Corpse Grinder Fisher was pretty out of the box. And that was my idea, by the way.
Right.
And that was so funny because we were recording Time to Choose and we were in between takes. I said, oh, it'd be great on this? George Fisher. And Jamie goes, George Corpse Grinder Fisher? Assuming that maybe I must know a George Fisher from like the 70s or something. He's like a former bass player in Free. So I'm like, yeah, no, Corpse Grinder, yeah. But nobody does that.
Right.
Nobody nobody from my era. They don't even acknowledge that kind of singing, if not to put it down and make fun of it. Right. That's not singing, that's Cookie Monster, and all that bullshit. And I love metal, and that's where me and Jamie stand shoulder to shoulder. Our appreciation of the entire family of metal.
Absolutely.
And I think that we're stronger as a family. And like any family, you may not like all your crazy uncles or some of your brothers or sisters, but it's still blood. Mm-hmm. And whether it's black metal, death metal, pop metal, hair metal, it all comes from the same bloodline. And it's all family. And we need to, you don't have to like it all, but we should support each other and appreciate and respect each other. And I didn't realize that nobody from my world has ever done that. And reached across the aisle and literally and said, hey, man, will you sing with me? Jamie said George was stunned. Dee Snider wants me on one, like he couldn't believe it. So I'm really glad I had that brain fart, which is, maybe that's what it was. But it was perfect. I mean, people, they're hearing it. Someone said, this is something I didn't realize I needed in my life, was Dee Snider and George Corpse Grinder Fisher on the same song. I didn't realize I needed that, but I did.
You know something I didn't realize I needed until I saw it, however long ago this was, but I've never heard the story of how this came to be. You were on Chappelle Show in the Ask a Black Dude segment with Paul Mooney. How did that happen, and how is it pitched to you? And did you know that you were basically asking questions for Paul Mooney? R.I.P. by the way.
All right, this is even. You rest in peace, Paul. This is really awesome. This story. So, people who really follow Twisted Sister, and there was a video called Leader of the Pack, and in that video, Bobcat Goldthwait from the Police Academy, and comedian, he was in the video. He and I became friends, and during the 80s, we hung out a lot. We felt, but things happen. People move. He was in California. I was in New York, and we just didn't hear from each other. Cut to, I'm walking down the street in New York City, and I hear, "Hey, Dee." Now, first of all, that's basically my life, and it's a great life. People recognize me, and everybody was like, some production company was doing a reality show said, "Do they all know you? Like they seem so like, hey, Dee," like that, they're buddies, And I said, "Nah, it's just kind of the relationship people seem to have with me." I'm like Norm at Cheers, like Norm, So, but I hear, "Hey, Dee," I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" And I go, "It's Bobcat." And I turn around and there's Bobcat Goldthwait on Broadway. And I'm like, "Hey, man, what's going on?" He goes, "I'm directing this new TV show for Dave Chappelle." And it hadn't come on the air yet.
Right.
And he points down the block, and there's Chappelle. He's standing there. Bob had chased me down the block. And he's like, "Hey, what's up?" And he's like, oh, cool. That's great, man. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Questions I want to ask. You want to ask a black guy questions, you want to ask a gay guy." I go, "Oh, that's funny." He goes, "You want to do them?" I said, "All right, go. Turn on the camera." So I just, on the fly, I didn't know it was Paul Mooney. I didn't know it was Mario Lopez. That is, no, not Mario
Cantone.
Mario
Cantone.
Oh, Mario Lopez isn't gay. We know. Okay. Is it? But is he? Is he really? Anyway, so Mario Cantone. And so I just said, "All right." And I just spewed out those two things. It was insane how big, though, that show became. It hadn't aired yet. And then you remember he went into his thing where he didn't want to make any more shows. So they just played them over and over and over. It got seen by so many people. For a while there, I was known as the guy, ask a black dude, ask a gay guy question guy. But that was just happened to be walking down the street and Bobcat saw me.
It was just so funny because I always, sometimes I'll even use this, and I don't know if anyone's ever told you this. It's sort of embarrassing, but it's like, I love for the Mario Cantone one. You're like, "You can't have this, but like, do you want this? You can't have it, but do you want it?" And so sometimes I've used that, just like, it's like, "You can't have this, but do you want it? I need the validation. Like, do you want this?"
Of course, Cantone was great because he was like, it was just no, we don't want every ass we always see. It was great, and it was actually good to know.
It was just one of those that, like, I always wondered if somehow, because of you being in New York and your ties to just so many different cultures and so forth, that basically you were asked and it was sort of set up, or if it was just as random as it appeared. Because obviously we know that those things aren't always as, reality TV is not real. So it was one of those, I wasn't sure how much of it was scripted or was really them finding you randomly and just, there you are.
It was purely spontaneous. And and it's funny when people don't have to fill in the blanks. They usually come up with the wrong answer. They're like, how did that, what the hell that happened? Oh, probably they reached out to Dee and he goes, but that's what people do. They don't think, "Oh, I'll bet he was just walking down the street and the guy who was directing the new show happened to be standing there and spotted him," like so.
It was definitely something I've always enjoyed. And like I said, I've never heard the story of how you got involved with that. So I wanted to ask you that personally. Last question for you before I have you plug socials and all that kind of stuff. What track are you most excited for people to hear off of To Leave a Scar?
First of all, we got like 5 more minutes because
okay.
Yeah, they give me like a break.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if they think I need to like take a nap or I got to fix my lipstick or something. I don't know, but neither.
Yeah, okay.
So,
okay. Well, actually, I did. Okay, I have another question, but since I was a minute left, I was like, all right, I got to cut it out. So legitimately, I've always admired you for being just a straight from the hip kind of attitude person, a no bullshit person. And I know that obviously it's permeated into your lyrics. It's permeated into a lot of just you. And it seems like as more time has gone on, I know the PRMC Jesus
PMRC.
Christ. Jesus Christ. I try to ignore them, so I don't even remember the acronym. But them. But basically, it seems like as more time has gone on with a lot of things that you've been outspoken about, you've kind of been proven to have a really good track record to be very astute in your observations and what you talk about. Does it kind of piss you off or bum you out that more people don't take what you say to heart immediately, like when you say it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, that's just whatever. But somebody approached me about doing a radio show called the VOR, the Voice of Reason, because I do pride myself that with all the the chatter on the extremes, I usually try to. I'm not that I'm centrist, but more just try to like sort it out and say and be observational and speak truths. Like the fact that these extremes, the loudest voices in the freaking room, think they are a movement because they got like 10,000 followers in their Facebook group. And I'm here to tell you, you're not a movement. You're a fucking parade. Okay, you're a parade. There's 7 billion people in the world, and the day 10,000 followers becomes a movement, that's the day the world ends. All right, so but still, but nobody says that to them.
Right.
The people just give them all the spotlight. Oh, they're making a scene, and it's the reasonable people in the middle, the center. So they proven 70% of that 7 billion are like middle. They're a little left, they're a little right. They go back and forth, but they're in the middle. But no one from this area is being a voice of reason very often, and that's why you say I make sense. But that's because I separate the bullshit from the truth.
Right. Yeah, it's just been something that, like, even as a young kid, like, just it was so obvious. Like, they always say the kids have very astute observations because they don't know how to lie. They just tell you things as they see them. And
kids are a voice of reason. They are voices of reason for sure.
So definitely growing up in the MTV generation and seeing you so often in interviews and so forth, and essentially growing up with you now as I'm almost 40 myself, that it's one of those where it's just like, I just can't help but smile and look back and be like, Dee has been so right about a lot of shit and no one fucking listens to him in the moment. And it's I can only imagine, like, if I see it as a microcosm of in the music industry or whatever industry you're currently a part of or speaking to or about, then I can only imagine it's even more so in your day-to-day life. And it's just got to, I would assume, be frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. I've done so much, but I'm pretty outspoken, and that's what comes with this record as well. Just feeling like this. I've been. I don't know if I was chosen, or if I took the job, or whatever. But I'm the voice for the voiceless. Too many people are in that middle group, and no, they're not. They're not screaming and yelling and raising hell, but they need somebody to scream and yell and raise some hell for them. So, I'm even though my life is great and I'm living pretty much, I've been through hell and back, but the other end is the fairy tale. I mean, I'm living happily ever after right now. And so I'm blessed like that. But I realized before I went in to leave a scar that this is my job. I was on social media, and it was actually one tweet that said, Dee, not all of us have the platform or the voice to stand up like you do. What should we do? And I wrote back, get behind me. I got this. Get behind me. Look, you talk about PMRC. Everything I said, I stood for. Every word I spoke on that day, I've lived. And Absolutely. I could go back today and they could check my record, and still married, raised my family. I said the parents should take responsibility for the music that kids listen to. When my kid wanted to listen to the Eminem record with Stan on it, he was 10 years old. I listened to it. A, became a fan of Eminem. B, had a great conversation about suicide with my 10-year-old son. Okay, I monitored. I'm the parent. It's my job. Okay, Absolutely. So and all those things that I spoke about in the 80s, I still have lived today. Meanwhile, Al Gore and his wife are divorced, so throwing stones at glass houses.
Well, I guess that's as good of a spot to leave off. Thank you
so
much.
Your last question was still good.
Oh, okay.
Like I said, they give me this cushion, and I sit here. I sit here like this, like drinking water and waiting for the 10 minutes to be up. Like, yeah, I'm rested. All right. So what was the last question?
Last question, just really, what song are you most excited for everyone to hear off of To Leave a Scar?
Stand. Stand, and it won't be pushed as a single or video probably until, I don't know, a few more are released, probably till the fall or later than that. And that's really because it's just like the album. The album is an assault, people. Basically, I punch you and beat you about the head and face for 11 songs. It comes out swinging, and the speeds are all up tempo, and it's boom, 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 bam, boom, 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 bam, boom, boom, bam. And after 11 songs, I stop suddenly, and I go, listen, now that I have your attention, I have something I need to tell you. And in that song, it's a ballad, and it's not really a ballad, but that's the best description of it. It's slow. And I start the first verse practically speaking to you because the message, and that's where the title Leave a Scar comes from. Don't leave your mark, leave a scar. You know that it's time to speak up. It's time to make your voice heard. There's the line in there, no more trusting. That whole thing, I'll trust things will work out. No, it's not working. It hasn't worked. No more trusting. Don't leave your mark, leave a scar. And that's the most important message on the record.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. Like I said, glad that I got to at least thank you personally for being involved in that fundraising event. And the new record, I got it a little bit ago, so I haven't gotten through the whole thing, but it's a great follow-up, and I really am hoping that some touring will happen for you here in the States, and maybe get to see some
out there in 2022. Oh, I want to add, first of all, congratulations on 300 shows.
Thank you.
I mean, bravo. I've been doing radio. I tried a couple of podcasts. Didn't really have my heart in it, and it's an achievement. So good for you, man.
Thank you.
And just tell people that the pre-orders are going on right now, all sorts of packages, but the album is available on the 30th of July. So you can order it to wake up in the morning and get head punched by Dee Snider.
I have to pick up one.
Yeah. And the other thing is on the 29th, I'm doing a live stream concert event. Got 1,000 vaccinated or tested people, shoulder to shoulder, no mask, real rock. We're letting it rip. New music, plus some twisted favorites, of course, with my new band. I'm so stoked to do this. Haven't played in 2 years. And go to metaldepartment.tv or just Google Dee Snider live stream. But it's happening on the 29th, and then it will repeat afterwards for a while. So I hope you'll check it out. If you got to rock again like me, check out Leave a Scar Live. That's the concert. Check out Leave a Scar, the album.
Yeah, I just went to my first show back, and I took a video of Korn playing, and it went viral as all get up. It's been weird.
Yeah, it does. So I'm looking forward to it. So I'll see y'all out there, everybody. And thanks, man. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, you as well.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
So that was my conversation with Dee Snider. Again, the new album, Leave a Scar, is out now via Napalm Records. Stream it, buy the vinyl. There's some sweet vinyl over on his website, deesnider.com. Just, again, couldn't have been a greater guest. Talks at length, isn't afraid to answer questions. I love that I finally got to hear the story of how the Chappelle Show thing happened. And I can't believe I didn't know Bobcat Goldthwait basically directed that episode. I'm a huge Bobcat fan, so I'm really surprised I didn't know his involvement in Chappelle Show, especially, that first season, the first couple episodes. But I've always wondered that because I thought maybe it was somehow set up. And to hear that it was as spontaneous as it seemed was really fucking cool. And the fact that, he even, thinks it's funny, and his reaction to at the end was really funny. So I just really want to take the time to thank Dee for giving me extra time, because I tried to cut it off, as you hear, a couple of times, and he just very much was like, I got time. So, that kind of just goes to show that he was having a good time doing the conversation. So, huge thanks to Dee. If you would like to keep up with him, you can find him on Facebook at Face Dee Snider, Instagram at Dee Snider, Twitter at Dee Snider, and again, DeeSnider.com, the landing page for everything that he's got going on. Touring looks like it'll resume for him in 2022, as you heard. So, if you get a chance to go see him, do so. Guy still has fucking got it. He's got a better body than I do at probably half his age. So definitely, like I said, a testament to just perseverance and all that kind of stuff. So huge thanks to Dee. And if you would like to keep up with the podcast, simple enough, just head on over to BrewspeakPod.com. That is the landing page for everything for this show. And thanks again to our sponsors, On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point. Use our code BSP15. Take 15% off your total purchase order. Rockabilia.com. Head on over there. They have over 500,000 items in their online store. Use our code BREW. Take 10% off your total purchase order. And last but not least is the Bean Bastard. Head on over there, pick up some delicious coffee. If you live in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their brick and mortar. Support all those guys and gals working there. And for the BREWtally Speaking Podcast, I am John, and we'll return next week with another legend in Dennis DeYoung, formerly of Styx. I'll talk to you next week.
Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Coach, what'd you think?
Fucking embarrassing!
Okay. I mean, I knew it was gonna fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were gonna get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks, but you knew what you were getting into. It will result in less listens. You're gonna see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're gonna see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you, don't use this fucking riff. It sucks.